All right, Ronald, let's go over this. We covered a lot of ground tonight, and I want you to be able to remember everything that we talked about. So, um, when you played the strum for me that you've been working on, there was still, there was still this kind of intentional movement where you were emulating the sound of Chris Cornell's strum. So, if the sound of his strum is bum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 da, you were kind of doing like this boom, like boom, ba 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 ba, and it's just confusing because you're like it's like stopping the wheels of a train or something. It's just having that natural momentum is going to make all the difference. Because the truth is, if you listen closely, it's not that rigid a strum where it's like doom, ba-da-da-da. There's other little, like the term I used last week, ghosting. There's like little ghosting here and there, and that's just the way the kind of the pick hits the string. So having a nice, loose, relaxed method of strumming is important. So you don't want to hold your pick too tight. You want to make sure you hold your pick loose enough so that it's flexing in your hand. So that was a big thing that we talked about tonight, just kind of reiterating that stuff from last week. So I'm gonna head over to this angle right here, and I'm thinking this will be useful for you to kind of see exactly what's going on with these new chord shapes. You also asked me a question tonight about the what's in my head, like what am I thinking in my head when I'm doing this strum. So remember, we're in 6/8 time, so you're counting each individual eighth note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Now notice, like even when I'm just tapping that rhythm out, in order to get to the next hit, my hand goes up. So what could we call that up? We could call that and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and. Okay? Same principle with the strum. If you were just strumming the eighth notes, it would be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So why not include the upstroke? And we could call that the end. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and. Now, nobody in their right mind would be counting all of those things like that. It would be even more confusing. But that's kind of like a starting point for you, just to identify those upstrokes as being the end. Okay, next, the chord shapes in the song and what the chords are called. So it starts with a C chord, as you know, and then he goes to an F major seventh, and then he moves this shape up to the third fret. So it becomes basically a G chord, but because the A is still ringing and then the open E is ringing, so it becomes a G sixth over A. It could be called something else too. It could be called like an A11th. You know, it has a couple of different names, but I guarantee you Chris Cornell wasn't thinking any of that. He's just playing the guitar. All right, so that's your whole thing for the verse. Now, before he goes into imagine all the people, he doesn't go to the G this time. He just lifts his middle finger on the F. So let's talk about what that chord would be called. Again, I just want you to have this knowledge, but you don't have to really think about it that much. So if we release the third string here, if we expose the third string, what we're doing is we're adding a G to an F chord. So that would be called the 2. And then we still have the major seventh in there. So when you add a 2 to a major seventh, it actually becomes a chord called a major ninth. So that's a major ninth chord. And he uses that as the segue into imagine all. So it's like this. Of us on the sky, imagine all, A minor, all the people, D minor. Now he goes to this chord. very, very colorful chord. So it's basically like in the written music, it's something like a D minor over C, which would sound kind of very straightforward, like this. Like imagine in the Lennon version, imagine all the people. It's a nice chord, but that Chris Cornell chord really is very cool. So what that chord is, it's a C, add 2, because it has a D in it, has 2 Ds in it, and it has a G, which is the 5th, but it doesn't have the 3rd. So it's a different kind of chord. It's called a 5 chord. So you could call this like C5 add 2, or you could give it even a more complicated, impractical name like C add 2 omit 3, which is literally the instruction for making the chord. But right now, all you need to know is that your 3rd finger is on the 5th string, 3rd fret, and your pinky is on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. And then it goes to a G chord, a type of G chord. It's not a regular traditional G chord. It's this chord, which is a G5 over B. Again, if I wanted to communicate this information to a very schooled guitar player, these are literally would be the chords that I would write down. But I would say in this case, these are very kind of specialized shapes that he's doing. I would likely just show the player how I wanted the chord voicing done. So here, I'll play the song from the top for you, and you'll just kind of get to see what's happening.
This is a good Easter song. This one's
All right, so that should be your focus for the week. You have your work cut out for you, and that's about it. I'll see you next week.